we were poor. We have to sum it up to move on. You see, we were very poor. But before the game, I looked up and like our best and worst results. And our worst result, I think, was like a 6-0 defeat. And like just by coincidence, the name of the referee was Worrell. So that's the only reason I brought it up.
Maybe it should be you that changes clubs. You're the one you've got to get out.
Yeah, now you're talking, Paul.
That's right, yeah.
You're the problem after all.
It's been right before our eyes.
Fortunately, his name was not spelt the correct way. So it's
thank goodness for that. You're okay then.
Try and dig yourself out of that one, yeah.
Well, so I set myself up for that. Yes, okay. So the other thing, on this day, I think I had to look back on this day and trying to work out if we'd ever won anything on this day, and like we haven't. we haven't won anything.
Who'd have thought that?
Well, to be fair, we are traditionally in close season, so we would never have won anything anyway.
Exactly.
This is true.
Yeah. Okie dokie. All right. So moving on, Andy.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to bring up? You said something about David Luiz.
David Luiz. Yeah. No, my comment was a bit glib, really. I was just trying to say that, and I think this has been going on for ages, and it's kind of going back to what we were saying earlier. Our defence has been appalling for about 2 years now, I reckon, and that's why I was alluding it to David Luiz. But the problem is, this was a problem with Poch. It's a problem now with Jose. And, do we want to revisit this? But I want to talk specifically about the defence itself. My theory, and other people's theories, is that one of our problems is we don't have that shielding in front of the defence. And when we had Wanyama and Dembele at the height of our pomp under Poch, that seemed to be quite a key thing. Now we seem to, say, play Lo Celso and Sissoko like we did in the Sheffield United game, which I thought they played really well, actually, especially in the first half. But they get forward. They're very kind of transitional players. There's no one really sitting there, maybe like a Harry Winks or an Oliver Skipp, for example, who will actually shield that back four. And I think this is a big, big issue for us. And
I think,
hopefully we'll resolve it.
Well, I think, now is probably the best time to approach that because, what with COVID and everything, there's been a whole lot of people shielding. So we could probably bring some of those in and we'd benefit from that.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea, Steve. Kind of missing the point, but...
What on earth?
No, but seriously, I think, no, you are right. And it kind of goes against... You're right, because what we're currently doing goes against what we would expect from Jose in terms of this irresponsible abandon to how he structured his team. He mentioned the other day his front six, having his front six available. And, and he was really excited by that, which kind of scares me because you never really expect that kind of thing from him. And, you would expect him to have a good defensive core. Now, it may be, bearing in mind, what game was it? It was the Man United game that we lost, I think, when he, not long after Jose came in, and they interviewed Sissoko, and he said, well, what happened? And he said, we just didn't carry out the manager's instructions. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. And obviously Twitter melted down as usual, but it may be that actually he sets the team up in a certain way. He's trying to set them up, and they just don't have the game management and the ability to carry out his instructions.
The players don't have the ability to carry out his instructions. See, with Mourinho, and I mean, let's look at what we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with some rookie manager. We're not dealing with some kid or someone that doesn't know, football inside out. We were making at Talk Sport. We were making a documentary recently. I was interviewing different people about Jose Mourinho, from Patrick Barkley and people in Portugal. Oh, my God. When you just hear the stuff, you kind of forget what this man's done. Yeah. And he knows what he's doing. He's not going to call out players. We and I'm never going to do that. But, when we see games and we think, what? Why is he playing? Why is he doing that? And people go, why is he doing it? Does he see? Of course he sees. Of course he knows. He knows what his plan is. He knows what going forward he's going to do. Sometimes you think, we just don't know what we're doing. We're just like, headless chickens. But there's something there. You don't let someone like Jose Mourinho, who, let's face it, was qualified as the best man, one of the best managers in the world, who's been brought in to replace our old manager. He's come in. Yeah, okay, it's not going the way we want at the moment, but we have to give it time.
Yep.
How much time? We'll see. That remains to be seen. But also, the way the season is at the moment, this is a very strange time. Look at some of the strange results we're seeing. Okay, Man City, they've lost 9 games this season.
Yeah.
They play some of the most amazing football, and then they get beaten by Southampton. It's very bizarre. So I think we just have to, be measured, look at what's going on, not overanalyze everything that's going over these 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. And then once we start getting tucked into next season, then I think we can truly start making a judgment on Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, I
agree. Simon, I think this sort of talk speaks to the point that you wanted to raise around social media, really, in terms of giving him time. So did you want to come in on that now?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there is, the hysteria, we kind of have touched on it already, which is, things go badly over one game, everyone gets hysterical.
Yeah.
There's obviously everybody has their input. I guess we have to remember was it 6 months? Was it October that Jose came in?
Yeah, end
of November, I think.
End of October, beginning of
yeah.
November, that's right. So since then, we've had Christmas and then we've had a pandemic. And it's kind of quite hard to get your feet under the desk, your sort of knees under the desk, and get everything working the way you want it to when you've had, kind of all this whole stop-start thing going on. So I agree with the point, which is, okay, yes, we have to let things ride out. And we do have to somewhat, I suppose, of course, we're allowed to express our disappointment when things go bad and our happiness when things go right. But I think to some degree, some of us might pay more attention to the here and now and the immediate shoutiness of social media rather than thinking the bigger picture, which is, I think, Paul, what you were trying to describe. I don't know, for some of our maybe younger listeners, it might be interesting to kind of think about things in a pre-social media context, which is, okay, you guys and myself to a certain extent have ridden, probably, some of the worst days and the better days, but you've seen ebbs and flows before. How does this compare to other ebbs and flows? Is this just a natural cycle of football to some degree? And I appreciate we're talking about uncertain times, but there is just a natural cycle to football, which is, you're good, then you're bad, then you're good, then you're bad. And where do we sit in that? And should we just kind of stop, being so reactionary?
Well, Andy, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting what Simon's saying, because we are going through a bit of a dip, of course, but it was preceded by success. So if you compare it to the 90s, which was awful, then, there is almost no comparison. It's almost like if you compare it to 3 or 4 years ago, then you can see that everybody else is now making progress. We're going backwards, it seems, and it it's quite easy to say that everything's going completely wrong, but you've got to have faith and belief that you can turn this around, like anything in life.
Yeah,
you just don't sit back and chuck it all away. It's you have to stick with it and work at it.
I mean, I've got two points. First point is, I wonder how much older than him Simon thinks we all are. We've been through it all. You've been through it all. But the serious point I want to make is that there was this thing about social media and this overreaction. There was Hassan, the guy from, I can't say his name, but the guy Hasenhüttl, him. Right, so he obviously, he had a period where he had that 9-0 defeat to Leicester, and they're doing really well now. And there was a tweet on Twitter that said, "See, this is what happens when you give your manager time. You get behind the manager, you give the manager time, and the board back the manager." Now, in the intervening period between when Hasenhüttl lost 9-0 and now, the board have backed him to the extent of bringing in Walker Peters on loan. That is it. That is the extent of their transfer business. We brought in 3 players in that intervening period. So if you want to talk about, if we're talking about, they look at things and just go, well, leave his shit. We hate Enoch and they don't do nothing. And on that basic premise that because of that and that preconception that they take that as a given that that's what is actually happening. And they've not even looked into what's happening with Southampton. He's, they spoke to the striker and I can't remember his name. Someone
Danny Ings.
Remind me. But Danny, that's it. Spoke to Danny Ings and he said that all it was is hard work. They've worked their asses off. They've worked and worked their asses off. And you can tell that but by the fact that they're, when they're defending, he's back in his area defending. And then when they need to attack, he's busting his ass to get up top as well. So it's just what Harry Redknapp would say. Run around a bit. But he's like, they really are working their asses off, and they're reaping the rewards. It's nothing to do with investment in that instance, in that period, because it's not to do with what they did in the summer. This is to do with like in that period from when they were shit, considered to be shit, and he was like, everyone was calling for him to be out the door, and they stuck with him, and he's turned it around just by hard work,
And they've got on a run. Everybody gets on a run. We're not talking about 2 or 3 years success. Look at what they've done. Look at how fantastic they've been. We're talking about a very short space of time. It's it's a little longer as far as the calendars go. We've been out for 3 months. So as far as football's concerned, since the Leicester defeat, what is that? 2 months, 3 months? So has the whole club turned around? Of course it hasn't. So when you say that, Steve, I'm with you 100%. It's a really cheap, easy shot to be able to throw and go, there you go. That's what happens when you back if you stick with your manager. And then we could be Southampton if we were, if Potts was still around, we could then be having that success. I mean, come on. So, and also, and I'm with you, and I'm not just saying this is the company man or should, but being logical. He's been the best manager that he could possibly get under the circumstances. And I even say that about Sergio Ramos, about Juan de Ramos. Juan de Ramos, okay, we don't look back and think, what a great manager. It didn't work out. But at the time, he was like the best manager that everybody wanted in Europe. And we went out and went out to get him.
Yeah. Isn't there also a point, I suppose, which is you get in a manager who you think is going to sweat the assets that you've got and get the best out of them? Because surely anybody can say you bring in a manager and you give him hundreds of millions of pounds. Well, of course, and in theory, everybody could do that to within a degree. But actually, what you want to do is get the best out of what you've got, and then what you want to do is make the most effective changes that you can for the least amount of outlay that you have to, because that way you get the most out of your investments. And ultimately, and I know that's nasty talk when it comes to football, but anybody who is in anything will just go, I want to get the most out of what I've got, and when I need to then upgrade, I'll upgrade. But just to piss money down a drain is, and as a club, we've done that with great regularity. So, actually, we should be slightly more frugal with some of our spending, spend it targeted in the right areas and get the right players rather than just chuck. Be smart, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. No, what am I talking rubbish? No, help me out.
No, 100%. And that is actually, that comes back to a point that I wanted to raise. We seem to, certainly there seems to be a lot of people coveting, the players that other people have bought. Certainly, the plethora of players that we're linked with and never sign. And like every single match that Man United play now is accompanied by a whole raft of Fernandes tweets. Why didn't we buy Fernandes? Should we be coveting those players? I don't think we should. They talk about who's the other team? So there's you've got Chelsea, and all of a sudden we're talking about Chelsea and we're talking about Arsenal, about them bringing through players. Where and those players doing really, really well, and all of a sudden, where are our players? And strange enough, actually, I was looking at our outgoings, and we seem to have shoved a load of young players out of the door in January, which were players that last season within that Premier, the Premier League or what, the Champions League